everyone. We're back on Elephant in the Room. Today I got Bobby Cleveland with us. We got Richard with us. Richard is the attorney or one of the attorneys that have filed another lawsuit on the Turnpike. We've had Richard on before. It's good to have you back, Richard. And we're hoping to talk to Richard today about a new lawsuit that they filed, and we've gotten to talk. Me and Bobby got talking about it, and neither one of us quite understood. Now, Richard, if I say this wrong, you correct me. It's called a Que Tam. Is it called
Que Tam?
Who's right, Richard? Is it Que Tam? Tell me Bob ain't right.
We don't have his voice.
Do we not have any volume on for Richard? Richard, check your volume if you would, please, sir. I hope we get some volume on him because I'm really interested to see on Que Tam. So hey, Bob, while we're waiting on Richard, see if we can get that volume straightened out. Did you see on today that Biden, that they got some more information, some more security things on him? And I was watching on the laptop, they've got China giving them diamonds and everything else. Is it not unbelievable? And here's what I can't believe is that one of the newscasters asked one of the chief investigators with the Republicans, is it treason? And this guy could not say that it's treason, that giving our secrets to China for money and trading our security for money, and couldn't say it was treason. Can you believe that?
No, I tell you, JJ, Biden, he's very careful with the papers he has. He's very transparent, and he's very honest.
Yeah, so, he needs to be hung, in my opinion.
He got all that money. The 50 years he's been in office, he made all that money and got all those houses and has everything.
Hey, you remember that Ivy League school that come and interviewed me and you was in there?
From Kansas.
And that guy asked me, he said, well, if you could prove all that, what would you do? And I told him, I said, well, I'd march down there to the White House. I'd pull him out and I'd hang the tree in this bastard is what I would do. And he goes, oh, JJ, you can't do that. And I said, hey, all I know is tell you that's what you do with trees. And so anyways, it's just insane that we can't even have people even call out what's obvious anymore. I wonder, does Richard have his – Richard, are you on with us yet?
No, he's on his cell phone. I think he's going to talk to Moto, see what's going on.
All right.
He's muted. I think he's just muted on his laptop.
Well, that's ugly because he's got all the information that we need on this lawsuit. So while we're waiting on Richard, let's kind of describe what's happened. So basically, we've got a Turnpike Authority that wanted to create and put a turnpike around Norman. And so they wanted to connect from Purcell to the Kickapoo Turnpike, go through a little bit of Norman out in the country. And so, again, they went through a really nice neighborhood. They did that without doing any kind of research or any kind of investigation into what that would cause and how it would affect that area. And so, again, they had several protests, and Richard and Alex and Stan Ward filed a lawsuit, which was an open meetings lawsuit. Now, here's what's funny. I went to the Turnpike and actually had a meeting with the Turnpike and Stan and told them, hey, if I'm going to prophesy to you, you're going to end up getting in a heck of a lawsuit and you're going to lose. And they went ahead and carried on. They ended up getting in the lawsuit. And guess what? Alex and Stan and Richard caught them, what I understand, and we had them on before with $5 billion in bonds and about $143 million in engineering contracts. Now, this whole project's about 29 miles. And so if you figure 143 million just in the engineering project, that's not buying any land. That's not putting any concrete. That's not doing anything other than engineering. $143 million figures out to be about $5 million per acre, if I'm not mistaken. It is absolutely insane. And they did all of this, in my understanding, without getting any board approval. Now, is that your understanding, Bob?
That's my understanding on it. It was the courts ruled against them on all four, I think either 4 or 5 counts on the open records. And they were doing things.
I thought they had 11 counts, Bob. That the court.
Well, maybe in 11 counts, but they ruled against them on pretty much everything.
Yeah.
And they didn't follow the Open Meetings Act at all, and even redacted some names off the minutes. And they seem to be having some Biden problems.
Seems like it. But what we saw then was, that not only did they get, now again, I think for our listeners that it needs to be very, very clear that they got $5 billion with the B in bonds. Now, one of the big problems in that was that we went and looked, and that they predicted that they could do about 63% of that in revenue funds. So what that means is that the money that they received from the turnpike, so charging fees on the turnpike, that they predicted that would pay 63%. Now, here's what's funny. If I went to my banker and said, I want to borrow $5 billion, but I can only pay 63% back, what do you think my chances of getting a loan going to be?
I don't think it'd be very good.
It would probably be pretty ugly. So what we found out, and what it seems to look like, is that we keep repeating. So they go out and get a turnpike, and eventually these turnpikes are going to be paid off, and then we're not going to pay tolls anymore. But that never happens, and we just keep using one turnpike to pay for the other turnpike, pay for the other turnpikes, and we keep going in debt, and we getting these $5 billion deals. Now, a lot of people need to understand, if you go out and you buy a house and you get a mortgage on that house, and you're going to have a land payment. There you go.
Hey.
So if you get a mortgage,
very good.
It ain't going to be for just the price that you bought the house for. It's going to be 3 times that by the time you pay the mortgage off. And so we looked at that they planned on paying about 63%. There was no way that they could pay back that $5 billion. And so there's a lot of things involved in this that came out on the Open Meetings Act. And then we went back in on Tuesday that the authority, the Turnpike Authority, had another meeting in which it looked like, and here's what's funny, I met with them before and told them, I said, what you're going to do, the horse is already out the stall. The judge has already told you it's illegal. Y'all going to try to bring it back in the stall and rubber stamp it, repaint it, color it up. You can't do it. It's illegal. And I said, when you do that, it's going to be 3 lawyers sitting right on the front row, and they're going to sue your socks off. I said, now, I done prophesied once to you. Let me prophesy again. That's going to happen. And sure enough, me and you went with Richard and the other 2 lawyers the other day to Cleveland County and watched them file the lawsuit. So, Richard, I got it all teed up on kind of what y'all's Open Meetings Act did and what you found about $5 billion in bonds and what that kind of means, and $143 million in engineering contracts, and that they did not, that they violated Open Meetings Act getting all that. And now y'all filed this Que Tam lawsuit. Is that correct, Que Tam?
That's all correct. And your pronunciation's really getting good, JJ.
Yeah, Que Tam.
I hate to admit Bob's right, boy. Y'all don't know how hard that hurts. That's bad. But Richard, can you explain to everybody what that lawsuit?
Sure.
I think I had a little misconception of what that is.
You bet, of course, JJ. So here's the deal. Oklahoma, like I believe every state, has some form of what they call a Que Tam lawsuit opportunities. And a Que Tam is It's actually part of a very long phrase that I won't try to say, that's Latin, but it basically translates to inasmuch as the king could do something, so can the private citizen. And these cases, there haven't been a ton of them in Oklahoma, but it's a creature of statute. It's in Title 65, if anyone cares, Section 372 and 373. What it does is, when the government belches out a bunch of money and spends a bunch of money wrongfully on something that is unlawful or fraudulent, then private citizens can make demand on the state or whatever political subdivision it is that we're talking about, or state agency, to go retrieve it. And we did that, of course, here after Judge Olson declared all these contracts invalid. Unfortunately, the Turnpike Authority had already paid out well over 40 million, and it's looking like it'll probably be over 50 million once they post the December payments that they've made. And it was all unnecessary. They knew that that there were serious questions about whether they actually even had any legal basis to do this stuff. So it's all a self-inflicted gunshot wound, basically, in our opinion, entirely unnecessary. And all these contracts, the first things that they spend a bunch of money on when they want to do these deals is a bunch of engineering firms, and these are big firms, and these are large dollar amounts. They've actually set aside. They've actually approved something on the order of it's now like 143 million to go to these engineering firms. And oddly, I think we've exposed so many things that have revealed a lot of very shoddy practices. Anyway, the dollar amounts are so great that there's a whole lot of firms that are vying to get in on these big gravy trains. And the problem here is that we have what really amounts to our biggest state agency in terms of the volume of money that they spend. We turn them loose, and they don't even have to go through competitive bidding. So on our particular deal, JJ, they awarded 12 $5 million contracts last January and February to these engineering firms. And then they go in a few months later in June, and they more than double those amounts. But I mean, and I know, if this was competitive bidding, you wouldn't have 12 contracts come in the door all at exactly $5 million. That just doesn't happen. So
that does raise what we like to call in the investigative business a red flag. Scooby-Doo would call that a clue, He'd call it a clue.
That's definitely a good Scooby-Doo clue. Here Judge Olson slapped him down and said, no, you guys messed up. You violated the Open Meeting Act. All your business pals were well aware and participated in this stuff. But the folks are going to be impacted. They didn't have a clue when you sprung it. And so he said that was wrong. You violated the Open Meeting Act, and all those contracts I'm setting aside. They're invalid. And the Turnpike's authority, in response to that, was just to, as you said, try to whitewash it and conduct another board meeting where they tried to ratify all this stuff after the fact, after they've already paid out, buku millions of dollars. So another development that you guys may have heard about, the feds just slapped them down on their attempt to run this new route along the west side of Lake Thunderbird. It goes right through the Lake Thunderbird watershed, which is a pretty big deal. And the U.S. the U.S. Bureau of Reclamation owns some of that land in there. And just Friday, they told them, you guys, they're not even going to allow them to do testing. So
Well,
they've
let
blown
me
all
ask
this dough, and they didn't do their homework ahead of time. You know the old saying, ready, fire, aim. That's our Turnpike boys.
Well, let me ask you this, Richard. Before this ever even really before y'all, there was a big protest, before there was a lawsuit. I actually got a couple of the top people and went down to Stan's house. We met in Stan's den. And, one of the questions we were talking about, had they done any environmental studies on where, and I thought it was just required anymore. And sometimes those things can actually be ridiculous what they require. But how is it that my county commissioner wants to replace a bridge that's been there forever, but has to do all this environmental study before he can go back in and put a new bridge? How is it that they weren't doing any kind? And now that's my understanding. Am I wrong that they did not do any environmental studies on where they were planning on putting this thing?
They didn't do any studies, JJ, environmental or anything else.
Yeah, I don't think they even did a cost analysis of where, what kind of damage compared, say we move this thing over here 2 miles or we go here. I'm not aware of, and the reason I'm asking that, Richard, I kind of put all that in engineering fees. So if we've not done all of that, and we're getting 12 companies, and let me stop right there. Does that not just seem odd that it takes, because, I would think you would have one engineering firm to do 29 miles. 29 miles is not, going across the United States. 29 miles, pretty little short. So why are we having 12? Do y'all have any idea why they have 12 different companies?
Well, they divvy out the work, and these are big contracts, and these firms are often populated by alumni that start their engineering careers working at ODOT or the Turnpike Authority, and then they leave and they go join one of these firms, and they're already kind of hooked up with their old buddies back at the Turnpike Authority. ODOT has more. They're certainly not perfect, and they've got their own problems, but there is, I believe, a good deal more oversight for ODOT than there is for the Turnpike Authority. And so I think that we see ODOT doing, a better job, although it's a very low bar, but we see them doing a better job than the Turnpike Authority does when it comes to, doing advanced planning and doing the necessary studies. I'm a conservative guy. I'm Republican, and I voted for Governor Stitt just because I wasn't going to vote for the lady that was in charge of our government schools.
That's Joy Hofschister. You weren't going to vote for Joy Hofschister.
But in this Turnpike deal, Governor Stitt, notwithstanding that I voted for him, that I'm a conservative Republican, he's not doing what true conservatives in our party believe in. We're against big government crushing the individual. We're for private property rights,
Sure.
And Governor Stitt is exactly on the wrong side of that deal, and it's just maddening. As a good conservative, he should be mindful that that's where his base is. We're not.
Richard, I wrote him a letter and put it out in public that I'm asking him to do a audit on, and I actually got a hold of all of them and said, hey, you should do an audit. You should order, clean your own house. You don't need lawyers suing you. Go in and see what's wrong and clean your own house instead of letting somebody else do it.
Yes.
I don't think that'll happen, to tell you the truth.
Well, you know what? When I make a big mistake, I've learned it's best to own it, and I think that the governor ought to own this. I don't know what the fellows that are running the show over there are telling him, but they're messing up every time they turn around, and they're costing the state a ton of money. As you know, JJ and Bobby, the Supreme Court has this case pending, and I believe they're gonna tell them, no dice, OTA. You don't have any prior legislative authority, and if that in fact happens, like we think is going to happen, all this money they've been vomiting out is totally wasted. So,
Well, and here's what's funny is they got all these promissory contracts and they're no good. And they got all this money on the hook. So who's going to pay it, you know?
yeah. Well, the engineering firms, we're going to give them the opportunity to repay it. We made a demand on them, and we'll see what happens. I don't think any of them are going to jump up and voluntarily repay it, but we think the statute's pretty dadgum clear. We also joined the board members of the OTA and the executive director, Tim Gatz, and his deputy director. There's a little different treatment. We can get into that if you care. It's a little, it's slightly, I won't say esoteric, but the board members and the executive director, the officers that we joined, they can wriggle off the hook if they can persuade the court that they were simply following a legal opinion of counsel in good faith. But no such exception exists for these all these engineering firms that got the money. And one great thing about Que Tam is you not only get the amount that was wrongfully paid under unlawful contracts, but you get to triple it. So, we gave all the engineering firms the opportunity to repay it without, having their amount tripled. And they, I guess, that's a lot of money. They're just going to roll the dice, and we'll see how it all comes out.
Well, let me ask you this. Go ahead, Bob. Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, JJ. Appreciate you letting me say something.
Occasionally, Bob.
Hey, okay, where have they got this? Where exactly is it at East Norman, where they was told they couldn't reclamation?
Bobby, it's the leg that runs along the west side of Lake Thunderbird.
Is that 70th, 80th, or
Oh, let me think on it's well, I believe that it's just slightly east of 72nd.
Okay.
So that'll be on the north side of 9, correct?
Both sides of 9.
Yeah.
Both sides of 9.
I believe so. Yeah. Yeah. But you're right. Actually, the most all that watershed area is on the north side of 9, but it also goes a little south, as I understand it.
Well, did Norman have anything to do with that? Because they're trying to protect the watershed and everything. Did they?
Well, the city of Norman is pretty solid in telling these folks, we don't want this. And maybe you should have visited with us ahead of time. But Norman, I mean, it's a serious thing. I know that conservatives, myself included, have often thought, the EPA and a lot of government agencies have gone overboard with some of their, protecting the snail darter or whatever, some obscure thing. But this is no obscure thing. I mean, this is the drinking water supply for, over 100,000 people. And, plus there's concerns about wildlife. And so it's not a little silly thing like we've sometimes seen, and we kind of roll our eyes and say, well, that's just the deadgum tree huggers being,
Well, JJ, I thought in that meeting y'all had, it seemed like you made that remark to them asking about that.
Oh, we did. Here's the deal. Because what was funny, even sitting in Stan's den, Stan's got a picture in his den of the biggest rose rock in, I guess in America that's outcropping, but he's got one of the biggest rose rocks, a picture of it in his den that sits on his place. So that is an endangered type of rock, or a special type of rock. Then they have a watershed or water aquifer that goes through that same area. And we were talking, well, how you done this without doing any study on how that affects? There's also a wildlife trail or something that goes through there that they know of. And so we were asking all this, have you done that? We got talking about a cost analysis on one place versus, because like where they're talking about putting this through. I mean, if you went and found the most expensive houses anywhere out there in this area, you can move over 2 miles and man, people probably be happy to have you buy their property. But if you go this, so it just seems from sitting there talking to them that they hadn't done anything. Now that was pretty early on in these conversations, and but I wouldn't have thought that they could even start the process until they'd done some of these things. And again, I'm kind of like Richard. I mean, I'm not a happy camper when it comes to, oh, we're going to stop this whole bridge and we're going to put off building a bridge for a year because of the American burying beetle, who is not going to be impacted that much by one little bridge. But, you know, if you're going to build 29 miles worth of road, I would have thought you'd have to do at least what the county commissioners have to do anytime that they start doing a project. And from where I was sitting and listening, it didn't sound like they had done anything. And from talking to Richard, it doesn't seem. And that's my question. How can you jump into this project? And the other thing is, you get caught with your hand in the cookie jar. You get your hand spanked. The judge rules against you. And then you turn around and you're going to have a hearing in which you ain't got to be a prophet. Now, I always joke JJ the prophet, but I went and met with them. I called them and said, listen, I prophesied to you once before. I'm going to prophesy to you again. You're going to go in this meeting, and what you're going to try to do is undo what a judge has just told you. Judge told you it's illegal, and you're going to come back in and bring the board in and go, oh, we're going to make it legal now by saying after the fact, the horse done let the stall. You can't sneak him back in at night and go, hey, you know what? We're going to say, oh, it's all good now, Judge. We brought the board in after the fact and we done it. You violated the open meeting. You can't unviolate it by saying, having the board go, hell, it's okay. We'll just do it anyways. You know, you can't.
Hey, Representative, you can correct me, Richard. When they had that meeting, when all the people showed up at that Baptist church there on Highway 9, I guess that was the first public meeting.
Right.
The question was asked in that meeting about, have you done that? And their answer was yes. Have they done a study on it?
That was.
I remember that specifically.
Okay, so what did they claim that they had done a study on, Bobby? Can you recall?
They did a study on the water runoff. Is what way I understand is that's what they said.
Okay. Well, I think they were putting out some false information.
Well, the bottom line, Richard, is the judge ordered against them, and they can't come back in and undo it by just
right. Yeah, they're trying to ratify payments under contracts that have been judicially determined to be invalid.
Right.
You can't do that. You can't put lipstick on that pig.
Well, now let me ask you this, Richard.
JJ can.
I can make you up. I can make a silk purse out of sow's ear all day long. Look at me. Well,
I'm gonna lay my metaphor on you, JJ.
Lay it on me.
Sometimes we worry that this, if we make really elegant arguments to you, it might be laying pearls before swine.
Oh, we have laid the pearls before the swine. That's right. You don't put your valuables out there in the hog pen. I mean, everybody knows that. But some apparently don't. You know what I'm saying?
Just play you sign off with a little Bob Wills tune today, the one that has the lyric about "Come on, Mama, the hogs has got me."
Hey, let me ask you a question though. I always thought that this, so I may not pronounce it right, but I got a general understanding about the Que Tam.
Que Tam.
It's like the Florida Keys. Que Tam, like those silly hats.
I'll be damned. I'll be damned. Que
Tam. I'll be damned. They hit us with a Que Tam.
Okay, but I always thought you had to have a whistleblower in this thing.
No, not here, Bob. Not here, JJ. And I'll tell you why. It's
that's
really
blowing
simple.
my mind.
Well, we don't need one because Judge Olson already figured it out and already made the determination that these contracts were invalid. So there's a doctrine in the law that our leader, Stan Ward, likes to say from time to time, and it's called the doctrine of the poisonous tree. You know, the fruit from the poisonous tree is no good, you know. So if the contracts are bad, if the contracts have been judicially determined to be unlawful and invalid, then you can't resurrect the fruit, you know, and conduct your little rubber stamp board meeting and try to bless all these payments that they've vomited out. Yeah. Yeah, that doesn't cure it. And I mean, it's not I don't think it's a very intelligent attempt to rectify things. What they should have done is gotten serious about trying to recover the money wrongfully paid and then queue it up properly and start over from scratch with real public input. You know, public input is not when you take an action and then after the fact have conversations with the public, right? I mean, they were already committed. They already
Yeah.
made the determination.
Did they do that without the board's approval? Is that correct?
What's that, Bobby?
Introduce some of those contracts. Had the board approved those, all of those?
Well, they did, but the board, you know, the chairman, the vice chairman, and the board member, the lady Dana Weber, who is the chairman of the finance committee, and she's also a board member. We took all three of their depositions, and not a one of them knew what Access Oklahoma was. Hell, not a one of them even knew the governor was coming to the meeting last February. And so they approved all these contracts without knowing what in the world they were for. You know, one of their faults is they use bureaucrat speak. You know, they'll say, instead of just saying what the hell they mean and identifying these turnpike routes, that they just say words that don't mean anything, like certain turnpike projects or various, you know, but they don't say what the hell it is. So, you know, hey, and so that bureaucrat speak, that opaqueness, which is the opposite of transparency, that caught up with them. You know, you need to tell the folks what it is that you mean to do. That's the essence of the Open Meeting Act. You know, we want our citizens to know what the hell their government's up to.
But now we have a whole new thing. I didn't know about this. I don't think Representative Humphrey knew about it on that study by the Department of Reclamation. I don't recall seeing that in the paper. Was it in the paper and I just missed it?
You know, it was just put out. The Turnpike Authority tried to get out in front of it. I guess that ruling just came down from the Bureau of Reclamation Friday. And so Turnpike Authority tried to spin it and put their own press release out on it. I've yet to see. I expect that the Norman transcript and probably the Oklahoman will include that in their next go round, next time they write any articles about the Turnpike. But like I was saying, I think that's very indicative of how shoddy or altogether missing their planning is. You know, there was no legitimate advanced planning. They just plunged in, and now they're getting whipsawed from several directions because they just have that this is what Governor Stitt wants, and by God, we're going to do it mentality. And I hope I'm not wearing you out with this, but honest to goodness, my gripe with the governor is that I would love it if he would just man up and say, you know, this got out of control, this was wrong, and just own it. You know, I mean, none of us have a grudge against him. We're for him, like I said.
Well, Richard, here's the thing, and I don't know, I'm not trying to take up for the governor, but here's the deal. If I hire you and you're my man to go down there and do the turnpike, and I say, Richard, I want that turnpike. This is my big project. I want that turnpike done. I want it. This is big. I didn't tell you to go violate the Open Meetings Act. I didn't tell you to go do that. When I say that, I say, I'm wanting it done within the law. So we don't know that the governor probably pushed and he wanted this project.
Right.
We don't know that he encouraged to go beyond the bounds of the law or to, do anything that would be illegal or wrongful or not transparent. Now, I do think that even if you work for me, and I was one out front trying to push that, then I think that you got to own it. And I think you go out and you say, look, well, here's where I did, here's what I wanted, did not push this. But because of that, and that's what I'm trying to say, let's go in and do a whole audit. Let's go in and look at this thing. Let's start all over, and let's do it open meetings. Let's do the whole thing right. And again, we're not seeing that. So I wish that's what they do. That's what I've encouraged them to do, but that's not what we're seeing right now. It does.
Well, from a taxpayer standpoint, I really have a major problem with it because I believe in the Open Meetings Act.
Well, it's people.
It protects the citizens, so everything's done out in the public. Where they have these meetings, you see how they vote. And I run into this when I'm dealing with the Oklahoma Secondary Schools Activity Association, where they claimed they were following the Open Records Act. They weren't. I mean, there wasn't even no way such about it. But the thing that gets me is when the courts came back and ruled against them, and the part where they were out buying domains to keep the public from buying that domain name, and they spent several thousands of dollars. It's not as much as what the rest of it is, but it's the way they went about doing it to try to trick and keep the public from buying that domain name. That person, whoever did it, whoever came up with the idea, is still working there. No one got fired, no one got moved around. They're all still the same people. That's wrong.
Yeah.
Well, I think we got to explain what you're talking about when we're talking about domains. We're talking about the internet and they went up and bought all of these domains up so nobody could get on there and talk about on social media what's going on. And so the Turnpike Authority, which, wow, that just blows my mind that they would do that kind of thing. But that's what they did, right? That's what you're talking about.
That's exactly right. They
here's
go ahead, Bobby. Sorry.
Well, the sad thing about it is I really like those guys at Oklahoma Turnpike.
Oh, I love them to death. I'll say I like them.
I've dealt with them when I was in the house, and everything was always on the up and up. I really like them, but this is just really disturbing the way they went about doing this. And just when you're
Richard said it a while ago. When you make a mistake, own it. So many people know. Anymore, it's kind of like, boy, if you make a mistake, I mean, they just try to cover it up. My deal is, hey, we all make mistakes. Now, this is a big one and kind of beyond, but you just keep making it worse and worse because you just keep digging a deeper and deeper hole instead of stopping and just making it right.
JJ, Governor Stitt had his people put out a tweet a couple of weeks ago. Our leader, Stan, had written an open letter to the governor urging him to take a fresh look at this and, describing how things had gone south and needed better oversight and so forth. And, he immediately had his folks put out a tweet that just doubled down and said, no, I got utmost confidence in Tim Gatz. And so, I respect loyalty and all that. I understand. But at the end of the day, these guys have messed up so much and they're wasting so much public money that I don't know, but I think they're probably insolvent. And I do think an audit will be very instructive. And if we're correct and the Supreme Court slaps them down, they're not going to be able to proceed with any of these new routes, and all this money would have been wasted. And it's of a magnitude that if they can't go get the bonds right quick, they're not going to be able to meet their obligations. And so I think it's a crazy roll of the dice. I think the legislature may very well be called on to bail them out with,
Well, I can tell you, I ain't bailing nobody out without an audit. We're going to have to do something, but I'm going to tell you right now, if that gets put in front of me, I'm gonna be like, if you're 52 million, or if you're 100 million, or if you're more than that, then we need to know where is this money and why did it go?
Right.
And now, Richard, here's what disappoints me in what you're telling us today is that I always thought these Que Tam lawsuits were you had to have a whistleblower. So I was all excited thinking y'all had somebody on the inside shoe that was going to blow out even more than what we already know right now.
Well,
And
funny you should say that, JJ. We have a someone who's an insider with one of these firms and knows how OTA and everything works, and they've been giving us some information, but they've preserved their anonymity. So it's our deep throat, and we don't even know who it actually is.
Well, and I told several people when y'all filed this lawsuit, I said, boy, I said, I've been around these guys probably as much as anybody on this subject and discussed this with them. And I said, I've always known they had to have an inside person. I said, but they don't say who, and I don't ask them who, and don't want to know who. I don't want to name or anything like that. But Richard, what I'm hoping and what I was wondering, are we going to see even more information come out in this lawsuit? Because what we're saying right now, yeah, it's bad business. Yeah, it's but violating the Open Meetings Act, it's not. Now, I will tell you, I think that since y'all come out with this lawsuit, I've noticed across the state you've had 3 or 4 more filed, and that people have actually went to jail on these things. So I think y'all have started kind of awakening people up to say, hey, this is serious and you need to take it serious. But again, what I was hoping to see is it looks like that there's a lot of, we were talking about the pigs a while ago. It looks like a lot of pigs up at the trough. When you see, oh, the pigs got 5, 5, 5, 5. How many times have you done business that it worked out 5 right on the money 12 times? That seems to a little engineering itself. You know what I mean? So it seems to be engineered. And so what I was hoping to see is, do you think that your lawsuit is going to bring some of this out? Is it going to bring it to light? Are we going to get to look at how did that happen? And is it illegal, or is it unethical, or just what's going on?
Well, there's no question, JJ, there's no question that these firms were all attended these meetings in the run-up, like in December of 21 and then January and February of 22. None of the property owners whose homes and farms were going to get taken and bulldozed, none of them got, any invite or notice about what was coming. But all these big engineering firms that get, their share of this, all this largesse, while they all were there lining up like they do. And I mean, these are huge contracts. These OTA and ODOT are the lifeblood of so many of these engineering firms, and their relationships are quite cozy, and there isn't any transparency, at least not with the Turnpike Authority. So, I think we've exposed a lot, and I think we can expose more, but I'm in total agreement with you. I dearly want to see an audit. And frankly, I think we're hopeful now that we have a new attorney general, he may call for one. So we'll see, but I think the public would benefit greatly because the dollar amounts are staggering.
Representative Humphrey, I got a question for you. Out there at the Capitol, I know how things work. Do you think that the representatives out there would be concerned if they voted no against the Turnpike Authority, that that would hurt them in their roads in their districts?
Oh, absolutely. I'm going to tell you something. They've been really, really good to me. If you looked at who's getting a big majority of southeastern Oklahoma contract roads and stuff done, I'm tickled to death, man. I'm getting a lot of road construction. They just went and overlaid some of our turnpike that's needed. It took me 5 years to get that. Working with Joe and me call back and forth. He's been you talk about I enjoy talking to him, and Tim is awesome. I enjoy talking to them, and you absolutely, if you're a representative, you don't want to go make them mad and end up not getting any projects in your area. But here's the deal, Bob. The way I look at it, right's right and wrong's wrong. We're not talking about. I look up there at Washington, and I see what's going on with Biden, and I see the FBI that had all this stuff before even the presidential election, which means they're putting their thumb on the tilt, and they're turning their eye on illegal treason, and the DOJ doing the same thing. And again, that's why we've got that, is we've got a bunch of representatives and senators up there who have ignored that situation. So for me, I'm calling everything out. That's why I came out publicly and said we need to have an audit. Yeah, it may hurt me, but I'm going to do it. But I'm afraid you're right, Bob. How many people are going to step up and say we need that done? And here's what's funny: if we'd all get together, they can't hate on every one of us. You know what I'm saying? If we'd all get together and say, "Hey, this is the right thing to do. Let's get it done," wouldn't be any problem. So we could get that done if we all, we could pass a bill saying that it needs to be done.
Okay,
JJ, most of those people out there, I think, are good people.
They are.
I don't want folks to think we're trying to vilify all the employees of the Turnpike Authority. Our beef is with the people running the show, the two officers at the top and their 6-person board. You all have heard me talk about this before. That board never has anything but unanimous approvals of whatever the executive staff puts in front of them.
Rubber stamp.
I think y'all said something like
they're absolutely rubber stamp. We tracked it, and of the last, I forget, there's something on the order of the last 1,100 votes. Only 3 of them had a dissent, and those 3 were just a single dissent. So that's not a real board. It wasn't that long ago when Carl Icahn brought Chesapeake to its knees and caused, board members to resign because he pointed out that they were basically just rubber stamping whatever the executives put before them.
Well, Richard, I don't see what you're doing. It's calling. I don't feel like y'all got a personal vendetta. I didn't start this personal vendetta against any individual. What you started was because of a process. You looked at the law's being violated. I can't tell you how many times, hey, I've investigated people that I truly liked. I didn't want to have to put them in jail, but the facts were the facts. And, if you violate the law, I can hug your neck and I can slide you a pack of cigarettes under the bar. But you know what I'm saying? That's just the way it is. If you violate, you violate. Now, I'm not saying that these people have violated the law in a manner that needs to put them in jail, but they have violated Open Meetings Act, which if a DA wanted to pursue it, would put some people in jail. And I think that's obvious with the judge's order. I don't know how you wouldn't win that case, So again, am I asking for that? Not at all. I'm not asking for that. But what I am asking for is, now that we do know all this stuff has happened, now that we have all this financial fiasco, would be what I'd call it. How about an audit, see where the money's going? And now that we know, that you got 12 people engineering 29-mile road, which turns into $5 million per acre on this issue on this project, that seems a little steep for this brother. I mean, I'm saying, hey, that don't look right. And when you say it takes 12 to engineer that, and hey, we're just getting started, even laid concrete, they've not done anything. So it just seems that there's some way excess money get moved around, pushed around, and again, it just don't look kosher. And like I say, Scooby-Doo would say it looks like a cook.
Here's the question.
Scooby-Doo would also say road.
Okay. Here's the question I have. if the Supreme Court rules against you, is it all over for you?
If the wait, Bobby, you're asking if the Supreme Court were to rule that the Turnpike Authority does in fact, or did in fact, have the necessary prior legislative authorization,
Right.
what would that do to us? You know what? We would still be able to proceed with our Que Tam, because that's not an element. That's not a necessary linchpin for us. Judge Olson's decision is the law. Of course, they've appealed it. I think the only reason they've appealed it is because they figure that's the only way they can get rescued out of the Que Tam. So the Supreme Court is going to have two different things. One is, what we sometimes refer to as the Pike Off case, which speaks to whether they even have the legal power to launch these new turnpikes. And in order to try to justify them, they have to go point to a previous statute that the legislature passed, and the only one they can find that's at all even remotely arguable is went down when Henry Belbin was governor back in '87, and it described a loop around greater Oklahoma City, which there's no way you can construe a 29-mile dive to the south going all the way through Cleveland County and deep into McLean County as somehow constituting a part of an Oklahoma City loop. I mean, that is such a tortured argument. I don't see any way the Supreme Court's going to agree with that.
But right now, with the feds stepping in there with reclamation on the watershed, they've got to change that. There's no way around that. Was that be correct?
I think that's right. Yeah. I mean, I think that that by itself could jack them up. But there's also the so-called east-west extension, which runs along Indian Hills Road, and I don't think that one was legislatively authorized either, but it's probably a little more arguable for them than the long stretch.
What if they've already bought some houses along that area? They're now saying they can't build there. What happens to that now?
Then they'll have to dump them at a big loss. And they do that all the time. They buy excess and then they'll lay off their excess. And, it can work out good for the right developer.
Does that dump go up for public bid or how does that?
I think that in the past they have done it both ways. They've conducted auctions and they've also done private sales. And, if you're doing private sales, that's worrisome, because that's an opportunity for abuse. And even the auctions, it's so unfortunate. People can lose their dream home or farm that they've worked to build or buy, their whole lives, and then have it all taken away with the power of eminent domain, only to find that, oh gosh, we didn't need that after all. So we're going to sell it to our developer buddy over here.
Did that reclamation engineering, when you found out about that, was you shocked?
No, I think it's completely consistent with how shoddy they're.
But you didn't know. You didn't know ahead of time on it at all.
I wasn't aware that was going on under the radar. But now that I've seen it, it's absolutely consistent with everything we've seen about them. Yeah. They're the gang that couldn't shoot straight.
Well, Richard, will y'all's lawsuit enter into looking at does any of these engineering firms donate to certain individuals or anything like that? Are y'all going to that extent, or is that out of the preview of what y'all's looking at?
Yeah, that we don't need to tread there, and not that we'd be afraid to, but JJ, you try to keep your case as simple as you can so you can get to the finish line. The old keep it simple, stupid mentality. Would that be interesting to learn about? Yeah, it sure would. I hope that the people in our press corps will explore that. oh, hell, we learned in depositions that there was one mayor of a town that was involved. I won't say it right now, but they admitted that they, when they were out stumping around trying to find local politicians that would sing the praises of this stuff that they wanted to roll out, they, right at that same time when they were courting these, mayors and city managers from these towns, they
Was that
found
the mayor from Lane, Oklahoma?
no.
Hey, you know what? We won't even incorporate down here because we're afraid they'd get the police and popo. We're anti-government down here in Lane, Oklahoma.
Well, I got the bumper sticker on my truck that says "I love my country but fear my government." So,
oh, absolutely. Well, here's the deal, and that's what we're talking about. Government, it's the people are the government, and the people. That's why government starts at the people, and that's why we are supposed to have transparency. And the government serves the people, and now it's again we've turned it around. Federal government should not be over the state government, and now we're scared to stand up to the feds. We're scared they're going to cut our money. We're scared they're going to throw us in jail. And again, it just keeps trickling down, and state holds the same kind of hostage on our local government. We should have strong county governments. We should have strong local governments that serve the people and answer directly to the people. That's where our government was set up, but we got our back asswards now.
You're exactly right, JJ. And, we keep talking about Stan. It's weird to be doing one of these without him on with us, but Stan was Oklahoma's original conservative populist. Well, I take that back. I guess technically that would probably be Alfalfa Bill Murray. But, Stan's been waging this battle for a long, long time. And, of course, now it's gotten legs, right? Since the Trump era come around, people are discovering that populism's okay if it's I think it used to be associated with being on the far left, and it certainly needn't be and isn't. And that's the beauty of what Trump gave us, the courage to think about politics in this way, that, it really is the citizen that should reign supreme and the government works for us, not vice versa.
Well, JJ, we need to wrap it up. You want to close it out there?
Well,
Richard, do you have anything else you want to add?
Well, I'd just say stay tuned. We're in the early rounds. I don't know if this will be a 15 rounder. I hope we can take him out in 5 or 6, but stay tuned. It's going to be fun.
Well, I think that what we're going to see is that even in this lawsuit, that it's going to bring some stuff out that just almost demands that we take a harder look, and we in the legislature, I'm going to predict we're going to see an audit. We're going to have to do something to take a little bit closer look. And again, I just want to point out to our listeners, hey, if you wanted to go look, I'm looking into court corruption. I'm looking into just every kind of state agency. When I say corruption, I'm not necessarily saying people are up there just doing, just like in this, that they pocketed the money in their own pocket. We don't know anything like that, but that they're just not following the legal processes that are set up, and that there are a lot of brother-in-law things that are getting done, and there are a lot of things being covered up, and that things aren't done appropriately. And so we need to shed some light. We need to put light. That's what the disinfectant that'll fix all this and cure all this. Government should be transparent. And so, hey, Bob, you know this for me and you're working on right now, what appears to be possibly 15 cases of rape that seem to be covered up. Now, we're going to have to make sure that we come out with plenty of evidence to support that. We don't want to go around making false accusations and stirring up something that's not true. But again, we've got that. We found money in agencies. We're working on DHS stuff that Seems to be we got a lot of cases. The governor just did an executive order to set up a task force to look at that. I don't think I was the only one pushing him to do that. I think there was 2 or 3, but again, we got that done. So there, we're going to shed some light on that one. So I'm just excited what Richard and them are doing. It needed to be done, and we're seeing this one agency looked at hard. We're seeing DHS looked at hard. We've really done a lot of work with DOC, and I think Director Hart, the new director in there, man, he's done some things in the last couple of weeks. It just wow. I mean, he has cleaned some house a little bit and stuff that needed to be done a long time. So kudos to him. I think he's moving in the right direction. So again, we've got some court things. We got a death row case that we got a new AG on. So when people don't think there's anybody up there working for them in the state, well, guess what? There's people like Richard and Stan and Alex that are operating as citizens, and rarely do you hear of conservative attorneys that take on stuff and stand up for the community like this. But I think there's a bunch of them out there that just need examples like these guys, and will start following in their footsteps. I think Trump has been a model for all of us to stand up and say, you know what? We each have a responsibility because we are the government, and we're going to have to stand up and make sure government answers to us and not us to them. So I'm excited. I think we're turning things around, and I look forward to what this legislative session is going to present to us. So I think
JJ, Bobby, you get the last word. Let me just say one thing real quick. JJ, we're grateful to you that you have the political courage to lead the charge, even though I'm sure you're going to be confronted with possible consequences. But I take my hat off to you, JJ.
Well, Richard, that's what I was going to say about JJ selling. Don't sell yourself short, JJ. We appreciate having a legislature like you and up there that's fighting for the people and looking at this corruption that's going on. And by the way, I want to say this before I forget. On the officer who was terminated after 35 years and never had any kind of discipline, if you look at the records again, you find out that they had written that up before they even had him sign it or even talked to him. It was already written up on the 10th. They terminated him on the 11th on the letter, but they'd already wrote it up on the 10th.
Hey, I got Joy Hofschiser shutting down the whole school, that I got that whole thing also. They had already written a 36-page letter, a lot of legal stuff.
I remember that.
And they wrote it the day before the board meeting even occurred. And then they asked the lawyer 2 days before it occurred, what happens if this happens? What can we do? I'm like, well, y'all's just clairvoyant. Y'all predicted it and wrote the whole thing before it ever happened. I said, ain't y'all, look at y'all. Who knew government runs so fast, And
they did it, and
nothing done on it. No, I called them. I put it together in a lovely little file and presented it to the board. We're talking about a rubber stamp board. Man, I present hardcore, absolute proof that they did this, and that board just sat over there and done exactly what they wanted them to do.
Fortunately, we're dealing with a different board, a different group of people
we've got a new school board. I think it's a new day. I think it's a new day, and I'm looking forward to what we're going to get done.
Well, I appreciate everybody being with us today. Thank you, Richard, for showing up and coming in here and getting it straight on that. What do you call it, JJ? What do you call it? Que Tam?
Que Tam.
Close enough, JJ.
We appreciate it. So we'll just sign off then. Thanks a lot.
All right, guys. Bye-bye.
Take it easy. Bye-bye.